So we now know Corey Graves' replacement on Friday Night SmackDown in the announce booth with Michael Cole, and it's none other than former NFL star Pat McAfee, former NXT wrestler as well on a couple of occasions. Pat McAfee has joined the WWE Friday Night SmackDown on Fox announce team. WWE and McAfee just announced that the former NFL star turned podcaster and radio host, who had recently had a strong run on WWE NXT, will join the SmackDown commentary team beginning tonight with the post-WrestleMania 37 episode on Fox. Now, McAfee and Michael Cole will make up the new SmackDown announce team. Now, of course, this explains the change to Monday Night Raw this week, and it's still a bit raw, isn't it? Well, pun intended. It's still a bit raw when it comes to the changes in the WWE commentary team with Samoa Joe's release. But McAfee and Michael Cole will make up the new SmackDown announce team. This change comes after Corey Graves was moved over to Monday Night Raw this week to replace Samoa Joe, who was released from WWE yesterday to work with Byron Saxton and the newcomer Adnan Virk, who has replaced Tom Phillips. Now, this is what Pat McAfee said in a press release. He said, quote, "For as long as I can remember, WWE has been a company that I have admired, both for its incredible staying power of creating riveting entertainment and for its ability to connect people all over the globe. I've been fortunate to try a lot of cool professions, but working for WWE was the one I looked forward to most. I'm incredibly honored and grateful for the chance to give back to the business that has given me and many others so much. Having the opportunity to sit at the same table that legends have graced is truly a dream come true. Now let's go get it." So it certainly is fascinating. It really is. Now WWE have also released a press release as well. We can read. Easy for me to talk today. We can read some excerpts from it as well. He talked about McAfee being joined at ringside by Michael Cole, the Vice President of WWE's on-air announced talent and voice of Friday Night SmackDown on Fox. WWE says, quote, "Known for his candid, relatable, and refreshing opinions, McAfee's insight and sense of humor have built him a large, loyal, and active fan base. In addition to being a philanthropist, social media influencer, stand-up comedian, and former All-Pro punter for the Indianapolis Colts, McAfee is also the host of the #1 international daily streaming sports show, The Pat McAfee Show, which is simulcast both on YouTube and SiriusXM Channel 82 Mad Dog Sports Radio. Additionally, McAfee is the host of the popular podcast The Pat McAfee Show 2.0 and has performed both inside the ring and behind the microphone on WWE's NXT brand." So there you go. I mean, to be honest, I'll be totally transparent here. I'm a fan of the decision. I am a fan of the decision because I'm a fan of Pat McAfee. I think Pat McAfee is fantastic at what he does, and if there's any doubt of how good Pat McAfee can be on commentary, I cast my mind back to that episode of Friday Night SmackDown on Fox. It was only a couple of weeks after SmackDown had debuted on Fox in 2019, and it was the show after the Saudi Arabia debacle, where obviously the night prior, on the Thursday was Crown Jewel 2019, and the next night was the SmackDown show in Buffalo, New York. And WWE had assured everyone that despite being in Saudi Arabia one day, they would be able to perform in New York the next night. They were going to have private jets, and they were going to have planes and chartered flights, and they were going to go straight to Buffalo, and they were going to make it in time. And then obviously what happened was that didn't happen. What actually happened, there was the discussion, the disagreement, allegedly, between Vince McMahon and the Saudi Crown Prince and the Saudi government, and the WWE superstars were stranded in Saudi Arabia for, I believe it was at least a couple of days, was it? Or at least certainly it felt like a very long time. It was certainly hours, and certain superstars were stuck there. The sort of mid-card to lower guys were stuck there. The main guys, the sort of top-tier guys, the guys that were the part-timers or legends, if you will, the guys that had other private jets, they left. So people like Goldberg, people like I think Roman Reigns, people like Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, all those kind of guys, Brock Lesnar, they all got on a private jet and they got over and they made it to SmackDown in time if they needed to. And but a lot of other people didn't. A lot of people were stuck out there. So what they had to do, of course, they had to scramble when it came to that show. What they actually had to do was get a load of NXT talent. It became Friday Night NXT essentially on Fox, and you had a fantastic show that included Adam Cole versus Daniel Bryan. You had a ton of other NXT superstars make their WWE debuts on that show, and arguably even until this day, it's one of the better Friday Night SmackDown shows that they produced on Fox. Certainly considering that at the time, now SmackDown on Fox is a lot better now than it was at the time, but that first few months before really the rosters got shaken up again, that first few months of SmackDown on Fox was horrific. It was so bad. That's when you had the King Corbin and Roman Reigns feud and the dog suit and the dog food, and it was just terrible. You had Shorty G. It was a really bad show. And then suddenly out of nowhere, you have this NXT show come on there where you've got Adam Cole, where you've got Roderick Strong, Shayna Baszler, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, all of these NXT names get involved, Tommaso Ciampa, and it was just a spectacular show. It was spectacular. And one of the funner aspects on that show as well was Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee was on commentary for that show, not initially. Now, initially, I believe it was Tom Phillips, Renee Young, and Aiden English, because again, all the commentators they were stuck in Saudi Arabia too. It was a nightmare. It was a logistical nightmare. Now, as I mentioned, those three names started off the show: Tom Phillips, Aiden English, and Renee Young. And then about halfway through the show, 15 minutes, half an hour into the show, I can't remember the exact time, but Pat McAfee arrived, and I guess they'd asked him to fly in from wherever he's based, probably Florida, I would assume. And he flew in and he replaced Aiden English on commentary. And you know what? He was fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic on commentary because he's different. He is completely different and he's completely unique. And that would be my thought process on this. My thought process would be, keep him the way he is. Keep him the way he is. Don't change him. If they change him into your stereotypical WWE announcer, and what I mean by that is if they get him in tonight on SmackDown and he's got to wear a suit and he's got to look, like everyone else does, I want to see Pat McAfee be Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee wears shorts. Sometimes he wears a vest. He's not business. He's very casual, and the way that he talks is fun, and he's as essentially he's funny, and he's got a unique perspective, and he's fun. He's different. He's very Pat McAfee. He's very much himself. He's very unique. And I think that if I tune into SmackDown tonight and I see Pat McAfee sitting behind the desk with Michael Cole and he's wearing a suit and he's all dolled up and he's tied up and he looks exactly like Michael Cole, then that will be disappointing, because it goes back to the point of sometimes the problem of when people are transitioning from NXT to the main roster is that they take any form of unique form of identity to themselves, they rip it away, and then suddenly they don't have an identity anymore. They just become cookie cutter and they become the same as everyone else. So I really hope that doesn't happen with Pat McAfee. Now, as far as him being an analyst, that's going to be interesting. Now, it's a two-man booth on SmackDown. It's a two-person booth, in contrast to Monday Night Raw, it's a three-person booth. Now, Michael Cole, without a shadow of a doubt, will be able to carry him through commentary. I think it's just a different way they'll have to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, I thought Michael Cole and Corey Graves did a fantastic job on commentary. I think Corey Graves is an excellent commentator. It makes sense. I mean, these moves now, obviously with yesterday's news as well, these news start to make a lot more sense, don't they? Obviously, Corey Graves was needed on Raw for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, Samoa Joe was leaving. We didn't know that at the time, but that was the case. And also, you've got Adnan Virk in there, who obviously, when you watched and listened to Monday Night Raw this past week, it's very, very obvious he needs a lot of help and he needs a lot of coaching, because he can call himself a WWE fan, and I'm sure he might have been growing up or whatever, but he certainly is not familiar. He is not familiar with the product, or at the very least, at the very best, he's casually familiar with the product. He is not someone that is completely up to speed and knows everything, everyone, every move inside and out, which is what I expect from my play-by-play man. So they need someone of the quality of Corey Graves on that team to help get him through that. And you could definitely tell that Corey Graves and Byron Saxton were getting him through the show on Monday, and even then he struggled. I think that's going to be a very steep learning curve for him. I really do. Obviously, you could say having Samoa Joe on that commentary team would have really helped them out, because who knows professional wrestling more on that commentary team than Samoa Joe? But I digress. That's a video we did yesterday. Be sure to check that out. But Pat McAfee on SmackDown, is he going to be the guy that calls the moves, and he's going to be the guy that calls how this certain headlock or this certain submission move puts pressure on a joint or does this kind of stuff? I don't think so. I think he's going to be there to add... They want him, obviously, on the show to add a bit of legitimacy to it. Obviously, he has an NFL background, which Fox likes. They like to have that sporting background, that legitimate feel, and they want SmackDown to feel like a legitimate sports show. So they've been looking for that for a while. I mean, there were rumors of having Daniel Cormier on that SmackDown announce team again, because they want that UFC-style, NFL-style analysis on the product, on their commentary. So that makes sense from that point of view. I think also, again, if you want Pat McAfee, and this is what goes back to my original point of trying to change him or trying to mold him into something that he's not, if you want Pat McAfee to say how the spear is going to influence an outcome of a match. If someone's got a bad shoulder, it can hurt the ribs. I don't think he's going to do that. The best way to do it, in my opinion, is to have him be a fan. Jerry Lawler always does this really good analogy, and I don't know how true it is, but when Jerry Lawler said he's doing commentary, he's like, I feel like I'm just watching the TV and I'm just reacting to how I would react to it on the TV. I'm not trying to do all of this analysis. I'm not trying to explain all of the holds. I'm not trying to do this. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just reacting, and I'm just reacting to how I'm watching it on the TV. Like if I was sitting on my couch at home and I had the television remote in my hand, or even though if that actually happens today, people watching it on iPads and stuff like that. But the point being is that I'm just reacting. I'm just reacting to it as a fan. And I think that's where Pat McAfee can really, really shine, because he is very funny and he is very unique and he is a very entertaining personality. So I think if they have Michael Cole maybe double up on some of the moves and double up on some of the maybe analysis, just having Pat McAfee reacting, I think is good enough. I don't know if he's going to be the modern day version of Jerry the King Lawler, who on color commentary in his day, not obviously now and not even during the 2000s, but in the 90s, him on commentary, Jerry Lawler was unbelievable. It was like Bobby Heenan. They were hilarious. Paul Heyman is one of my best, one of my absolute favorite color commentators, because, again, he's not doing a load of analysis, but he's just reacting and he's being a character. And maybe that's what Pat McAfee needs to do. So obviously those are big shoes to fill, but I think he can do that. I think he can be an entertaining presence on the show, and I'm excited to see what he does. And to be honest, you know, I was an advocate when it came to Pat McAfee for using him more in NXT anyway, because there was the reports last year, wasn't there, around Christmas time, that NXT decided to take him off of television and he wouldn't be used on television, all that kind of stuff. And at the time, everyone went, why? I mean, Pat McAfee is fantastic. He was one of the better things about the show. I think it was almost embarrassing for some people that Pat McAfee, a guy with no pro wrestling experience apart from being a fan, came in and by far, by absolute a country mile, was the best promo on that show. Nobody could touch Pat McAfee on the mic. He was that good. So who's to say he can't transition across from being a manager or a part-time wrestler in NXT to being a commentator? I think he can do it. Now, obviously, I'll say the same thing I said about Adnan Virk prior to Monday's appearance on Raw. It's one thing to be entertaining and it's one thing to be a fan, and I mentioned about Jerry Lawler, it's one thing to be reacting to what's happening in the ring, but with any color commentator or with any commentator in WWE, you have to deal with Vince McMahon in the ear. That's the problem. You have to deal with Vince McMahon producing in the ear. You have to deal with Vince McMahon yelling at you in your ear, which so many commentators over the years, whether it's JR, whether it's Mick Foley, whether it's Taz, Michael Cole, whoever, they've all come out with their own horror stories of Vince McMahon just absolutely brutalizing them in their headphones, of telling them you're stupid, you got it wrong, you messed up, and all that kind of stuff. So is Pat McAfee going to deal with that? On the flip side of it, you could say maybe Vince won't do that to him, because we have heard that he doesn't do it with some people. Jerry Lawler, and Jim Ross has backed this up and said, look, Vince McMahon would never ever scream at him. Never. He would just scream at me instead. Who's to say that Vince McMahon will scream at Pat McAfee? Because to be honest, Pat McAfee's a fan, but this isn't the be-all and end-all for him. I would think if Vince McMahon starts yelling at him and screaming at him, he'll just go, I don't want to do this, and just leave. You know, so I think WWE, it's a mutually beneficial thing here. You have to remember this as well. Whilst it may be a dream for Pat McAfee, he's got other irons in the fire. It's not like when Vince McMahon is screaming at Jim Ross or Michael Cole when pro wrestling's their life. Pat McAfee's a massive fan, but if it doesn't work out, he'll keep doing his radio show. He'll keep doing his podcast. So maybe Vince McMahon won't yell at him. I don't know. Maybe that's something to consider as well. Maybe just Michael Cole's going to get even more brunt of it. But I think it makes SmackDown interesting. There's no doubt at this point SmackDown's the A show as well, isn't it? SmackDown's the A show. It gets the most ratings. It generates the most money for WWE. It's on the biggest network in Fox. And I know that I thought Michael Cole and Corey Graves were a good announced team, and I know Corey Graves is very well liked in WWE, but you know, Pat McAfee is a name, and he's a character. He's a character, and I think, look, if it pays off, SmackDown just became even better. So it's going to be very exciting. I'm certainly very curious to see what Pat McAfee does tonight, and I'm sure a lot of people will be tuning in to see how well he does. Like I said, my big concern is don't change him. Let Pat McAfee be Pat McAfee, then you can print money. then you can print money. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Pat McAfee joining the WWE Friday Night SmackDown announce team with Michael Cole starting tonight on the post-WrestleMania 37 edition of SmackDown? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.